Welcome to the On Record podcast. This is a podcast where we talk with professionals and subject matter experts from diverse markets and disciplines that are using video and audio in innovative ways to support their organization's objectives. My name is Mike Anzalone, and my co-host is Carmen Hawk. Today, our guest is Carlos Zalaquett. Carlos is the former professor of educational psychology, counseling, and special education at Penn State University. Carlos is also internationally recognized, is a recognized expert on therapeutic outcomes assessment, mental health, counseling, psychology, biofeedback, and neurofeedback. Welcome to the podcast, Carlos.
Thank you. So good to be with you today.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you on the podcast. And before we kind of hop into the conversation, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey throughout your career and the highlights of what you've been able to accomplish so far?
I have a long story in counseling and psychotherapy, really, because I initially began as a student of philosophy, and I always saw psychology and counseling as the runaway daughters of the larger discipline, philosophy. Until I took some courses and I got fascinated. You know, I have a set of instructors and faculty who talk about the mind, the soul, the behavior. So I ended up not only learning as much as I could, volunteering to be a TA for their courses, but also training animals in a zoo, training animals in laboratory, using applications in everyday activities. It became my passion. So all of a sudden, I got a degree in psychology in Chile. Then I came here to get a master's in clinical psychology, then a doctorate on behavioral neuroscience. And in every step of the way, there were new platforms that opened in front of me. And of course, my practice was very successful. And I have to say, maybe I should have stayed with that, and now I will be much richer than I am. But I decided to go and teach because I thought this type of well of information, possibilities, tentative contributions, reconstructing of a new world couldn't be kept for the few. So the idea was not only to go back and teach, supervise, but also to manage and lead organizations. In fact, I'm still the president of the Pennsylvania Mental Health Counselors Association, past president of the Sociedad Interamericana de Psicología, and the president-elect for Division 52, which is the Society for Global Psychology of the American Psychological Association. So in all these platforms, my idea was to find ways to train better and to solve, meaning provide services and interventions with good outcomes. And that's what I've been doing for the last, you don't want to know how many years, because there are way too many. One of the things that I did early on, and this will connect with us, was to record with a tape recorder my sessions. And later on, with a handheld camera, when we have those cameras coming up, I will record clients. And then we will review those videos together to understand in more depth, to dig in about what was happening, what were the possibilities, what were the strengths, and how to integrate them to make a new response for a better outcome. So as you can imagine, speaking with you all is a blessing because you work on a platform that has helped me accomplish those goals. That part of my history and why is it that I'm having this conversation with you.
Carlos, can you share some examples of how you've been able to use video in terms of training your students and
Absolutely.
researchers?
That's incredible.
The program I was in until June happens to have a clinic, the hair clinic, and the clinic has every room equipped with video recording systems. And they are all saved into a hub where students, faculty, and supervisors can go and visit or revisit the specific sessions. So that became central for supervision. Of course, we use it also for training, because once you find a way to demonstrate a particular skill, if that is saved, it can be used in your lectures, especially in courses like practicum, supervision, externships, where the students can come back and provide an analysis of what they did. So it's not just a self-reflection based on memory. They can revisit the session and actually make an even better, quote unquote, self-reflection, a more accurate, analysis of what they did. And then we come in, supervisors, to watch the session, and then watch the session with the student, highlighting the strength and competencies, and also bringing to the forefront areas for further improvement. So I used those videos in class and with my students, but always remember, with all ethical and consent from the client. The clients know that this is a training clinic. And so that gives us, the faculty and the student, the possibility of really revise. Now, the second major application was to review the sessions to analyze what changes. What happened from session 1 to the final session? How does the client look like? And have a chance to assess outcome, which is one of my current main projects. And in fact, we were able to accomplish that in situations that were quite interesting. For example, one of my colleagues said to me, "We have a counselor with an accent." I'm sorry, you are telling me, which is I'm a faculty with an accent? And I don't think that the student is doing well, blah, blah, blah. I think that the student needs to be removed. And you go, wait a minute, it's an international student. Isn't that a little bit drastic? So I said, why don't you build the case? I will look into the situation and I will get back to you or with you, and then we can discuss options. So what I did is I went to both. I went to the recordings and I realized that this student happens to have a large number of clients. They all kept coming. The sessions seemed to be constructive. And when I look at the self-report of the client, they were responding in a way that demonstrated that they were improving. So I sat down with my colleague and I said, I really value your concern, but I have to say this, I don't have a way to support any actions because here is the data. Well, you wouldn't be able to do that if you don't have all these recordings. So that's another way. So supervision, training of skills, supporting case work, and also supporting research. So I have taken big advantage of your system. What can I say?
Can I just say, Carlos, that you are very passionate. It comes right through the screen. I can feel how much that teaching and also continuing your own education, how much it means to you. I'm curious, you mentioned the early adoption you had with a handheld video recorder and reviewing those tapes versus now having a different system, using the Vault system, for example. Can you tell us the difference in the feedback you receive from clients or those you were supervising then versus now? Is it much more commonplace? I'm just curious to hear how that evolution looked.
Great question, because this is not a big evolution in a number of ways, but I have to tell you, those were big recording machines that you needed to hold on your shoulder. Today, we have a camera on a corner of the room. Second, those tapes not always worked. So even though you did the recording, that didn't mean that you will be able to see them again. And to watch them, you needed to have these huge machines with those big VHS tapes. And so it was pretty innovative, but pretty overwhelming. Plus, you mess up in terms of capturing a lot of the things that you were recording. In other words, you were in the session, but your attention that should always be on the client was split between the camera and whatever the client was saying. So without having all that equipment that was manualized, you can have this automated system. You can go have the session in the best possible way without distracting yourself with all the mechanics of this. And at the end of the session, you can actually say, would you like to review a moment and just click on the laptop, show the person the connection and all that. Now, how is that for magic?
Some kids will never know the magic of VHS to digital. It's some people will never know.
You guys are too young, but I can tell you, my wife, I have changed countries and states more times than you will ever know. And at the end of the day, she will say, wait, are you still carrying those boxes with those big tapes?
Vintage.
When do you have time to watch them? And I'm going, these are my treasure. At some point, I will sit down. So they became a heavy burden. Your system allowed this to be stored and be accessed in an ethical and appropriate way, from any point in the world. If you have the secure platform to do that, what can be more exciting than that? So all of a sudden, you can revisit the sessions with the client in place. One of my clients said to me once, I did tell you that blah, blah, blah. And I said, I don't have any recollection. Let's go back to the session and check to see, because I'm really concerned that I truly let you down. And I want to learn, where did I miss this? Well, we couldn't find it in the session. So the client deeply apologized and said, I was sure. I was convinced that I mentioned this to you. And I said, I know it was important to you. It would have been great, because I would have done something about that to fulfill your request. The opposite happens also. That a client will come and say, last session was outstanding. I walk out of that session and I went straight to my partner, and we sat down and ironed out all. I wouldn't be able to do it unless you say what you said. I'm going, what in the world did I
Better go watch that again.
What was the triggering point? So I can go back to the session and review to say where the magic happened. So that has made my own training, much, much better, because I can go back and revisit things that worked and understand why they did, and things that didn't work, make amends, and go back at it again to regain training on those dimensions. So it's a very constructive situation. I'm sorry for the number of examples, but I can give you a bunch of them.
I feel like my job is threatened right now. You're very good at this, Carlos. You're extraordinary.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Carlos, in your description of the work that you've done with video, you've kind of implied that you've used video for both qualitative and quantitative kind of research. Do you feel that video can support either one of those methodologies? Do you have a preference of how you use video to support data collection and research?
Oh, what a great question! And I'm gonna try to restrain myself, because from a qualitative point of view, you can analyze every session to understand what were the quote unquote themes and how those themes evolve over time or over sessions or within the session. And then you can also focus on a particular person and analyze that from a qualitative point of view to understand how change happens. Or in my case, since I'm a developmental counseling therapist and also a microskills a therapist, in addition to many other denominations, because I don't believe in a single therapy model. And so I can analyze how the microskills, work out on a successful session versus a non-successful session, and understand why, which ones, etc., in a qualitative way. But I can also multiply that by a number of clients, a number of sessions, etc., and do quantitative work. In fact, we use a system connected to yours, which is the self-report of the client. And we have looked at the self-report of the client to find out, is there real change from beginning to end? And what do you know? My research with my team not only shows that there is change, but it shows that the change is clinically significant. Because if you are a smoker and you go to my smoke cessation treatment and you come back at the end and you say, I used to smoke 30 cigarettes a day, now I'm down to 3, that will be statistically significant. But you are still at risk of the negative effect of nicotine because you're still smoking. And so change, statistically significant change, is not always clinically significant.
That's an interesting point.
And then you can certainly analyze that. So my students are doing great. Not only, I should say, our students are doing great. Not only they promote change in a significant, clinical significant way, but also we did a comparison between international and national students. And guess what? Both groups have the same rate of success. But here's what we found that can change a little bit the landscape of what we do. Yes, they were all successful, but some were more successful in improving clients' anxiety collaboratively than depression, and vice versa. So we figure this gives us an opportunity by the end to say to the student, you are doing very well with this type of disorders. Maybe you need to sharpen your skills for this other type. Or you can specialize in what you are already doing quite well. But also qualitative gave us a chance to look at the tapes and understand that we can use these sessions, analyze them, and by mid-semester, say to our trainees, our students in training, you are doing quite well, but here are areas of improvement. We still have the other half of the semester to make improvement. So it's not to chastise or criticize, but to find ways to get more rounded and competent students. So qualitative and quantitative pan out quite well in this process.
You mentioned that you kind of started with that 100-pound shoulder webcam, and now
actually not webcam. Those were real cams.
That's right.
Vintage.
Real cam, vintage cam. To having these high-def cameras mounted in the rooms. During that evolution, as technology has improved, what challenges have you come across yourself, your supervisors, your students, in terms of adapting to the new technology that is available?
Oh, that's a great question, and it's the number one reason of concern and my major complaint. Not all of our students, faculty, supervisors, and professionals are on board. In fact, there are many different reasons for that. On the one hand, you have what we call stage fright, isn't it? When you are afraid of seeing yourself in a recording. Number two, the issues of quote unquote using this type of recordings to, instead of apply them in a constructive educational way, to use them to attack or criticize, performance, or as a way to document, negative issues, or, which is another major thing, the issue of freedom. I don't like to be taped. I don't want to be in a training place where taping takes place. Well, I think that that's terrible, because you are missing a tremendous opportunity. None of these systems are intended to be punishing, and quite the contrary, they are supposed to be used in a constructive way. And so, not everybody is on board, and I have to say, I'll be happy to sit down with anybody who disagrees and share with them the amount of information we have that demonstrate how relevant using of these systems is.
You've mentioned ethical capture and in the essence of doing things with protections in place and standards in place so that you can build a comfort with people who might be resistant to the adoption of video or having a recorder or recording of themselves. Would you describe a little bit more about, I know the environment and the framework of the recording system you're using provides that. Is there anything else you put into place? Any other areas that you lean into when you're maybe making a persuasive argument for video capture?
Well, let me, for the sake of time, let me remind all of us that telehealth happens to have a number of constraints, from quote unquote, confirming who's the person participating and making sure that is the client. Second, in an environment with no disruptions and with no witnesses or intruders. Third, with clear transcription and encoding that allows for the protected transfer of that information. So only people with the specific software could see those tapes. And third, with clear agreement from the client. So when I say use video recording, I'm not saying use it in a dictatorial way. Of course, there are clients that may have a higher level of suspiciousness, or they may have some sort of concerns about being observed.
Sure.
It's called paranoia. And so in those cases, you will have to have a conversation with that person and over time, hopefully bring him to understand of the benefits and agree to use them. So if you use it with clinical considerations for the best benefit of the client, making sure that these are secure platforms and making sure that the client agrees and you comply with any other, for example, HIPAA regulations, the systems are pretty safe, and I believe yours are. I've never saw a break in the system, and we have used this system for a long time.
Carlos, what do you think is the future of using video, particularly in your field of clinical psychology?
Yeah, I actually, let me remind you, I'm blessed enough to be on the platform of clinical psychology, counseling psychology, and also mental health and counseling, mental health and clinical counseling. The reason I say that is because different than others who keep turf, I really try to integrate all these fields. The demand of mental health is so large that there isn't enough of us to cover. So this idea of only we can do this, you can't, only creates an opportunity for many people missing access to mental health services. Now, what's the future of video recording? I think that it will become larger and larger. Let me explain this to you. So one day, I needed to use a recording, not from your platform, a recording that a colleague of mine sent me of a mock interview with one of their colleagues. And they wanted to know if it was good enough as a demonstration of the micro skills. And of course, they sent it to me because I'm supposed to be one of the experts on micro skills. And what do you know? I opened the video and I just couldn't get the sound because it was too low. And so I put transcript. And the silly system did transcript in a beautiful way. And so I contacted one of my techs and they said, hey, listen, get Word to do a transcript of the session. Mm-hmm. And I'm going, what Word has to do with this? Well, what do you know? It did a better job once I learned how to use it. The transcript was great. Now, think about this. Now we have all these AI systems. So as you think about this, if I'm having a lot of time invested on analyzing, producing papers, demonstrating what the students can accomplish and all that, guess what? That will be speed up to an exponential of n, because all the system can do those type of analysis, transcription and analysis in fractions of a second. I have a colleague in Germany that developed a software now that you can use to study interaction between the nonverbal interaction between the counselor and the client. And they are able to demonstrate that synchrony of movement over the length of a session predicts better rating, better outcome of that very same session. And if you repeat the analysis over time, that same relationship remains. Isn't that fascinating? So the future, I believe, is for companies like yours. Because in order to apply all of these platforms, we need to have the recording.
Was that research in Germany, was that a sequential lag analysis?
We have a lot of different models. We use multilinear regression analysis, which is a new system, well, not a new, from 2015, but it has the flexibility, because the major thing about what we do is that it's very subjective. And so when people say, when you are saying that you are effective, let me tell you the reason why we believe you are not. Or let me tell you why we cannot believe you, because the system of analysis is flawed in a number of ways. We have a historical event in psychology where a British guy came to the United States, Hans Eysenck, and did an analysis of psychotherapy effectiveness and reached the conclusion that this new discipline, that was offering major success and major treatment for pretty much everything that was affecting anybody, actually, guess what? Did not work. Not only that, he was as brave as to say, and for some therapists, I'm not going to say him because I don't want to get in trouble, for some therapists, actually, the client got worse. The reaction to all that, he went back to England and only came back to the United States to an event on his behalf, like, please forgive us for everything we said about you. And but he was a statistician and was able to demonstrate that what was demonstrated as effective was based on a flaw analysis. And so since then, we have been the most harsh critics of what we do. And I'm going to tell you, every time anybody came up with a successful therapy, somebody will show up and take them down for one reason or another, until these new systems of analysis came on. And all of a sudden, a new perspective came up. And I have to say this, research today shows that we are effective to the tune of 60 to 80% across disorders and across therapies. The majority of the therapies happens to have some degree of effectiveness. I went to see a physician because I moved to Pennsylvania. I didn't shovel the snow the first day. So by the third day I went out to shovel. It was icy on the bottom. I just cracked the ice and shoveled out. I couldn't move my arm for about a week. And in the middle of that, I was going to a conference in Colombia. So I went to my primary doctor and I said, I'm going to be in a 8-hour flight. I need your help. And the guy said, well, I'm going to put these particular injections because I can see those big knots. I said, oh, great. Well, he did. And then I said, so how effective are these? No, they are very effective. To the tune of 30% success. And I said to myself, if I say that I have a therapy that is 30% effective, the psychiatrists and medical doctors will kick me out of the room. So that's another reason why I got engaged in the idea of outcome assessment. Because I realized that we, the mental health providers, are held to a much higher standard than the medical and psychiatric professions, interestingly enough, when in fact we are as or more effective for most of the known mental disorders. So you can imagine analysis of that effectiveness with video support is fantastic.
To kind of pivot for a minute, many of our listeners, they struggle with stakeholder buy-in to acquire some of these video systems. What advice can you give our listeners to help advocate for video technology investments within their own organizations?
As I mentioned, the idea of not only, because of course improving training and improving quote unquote analysis of what the students do and ways to improve and all that is very relevant, but it's very relevant for us professionally. So for a university to invest in providing these platforms, you, in my mind, you should focus on the outcome benefit. Why? Having this type of possibilities and conducting this type of analysis will give you an opportunity to explain to the stakeholders, the budget managers, the university presidents and provosts, an understanding of the intrinsic benefit of this. Furthermore, what I've said to many of my colleagues, I'm a firm advocate of training clinics, but I think we need to transform training clinics into a research, apply training clinics. In other words, how do we work not only to provide the services, but to determine best and most effective services, and we do that by demonstrating outcome. So if you can provide that type of data, you have, I believe, a higher likelihood of being supported financially. Because again, and also to apply for grants. I'm not sure that many training clinics will get grants, but an applied research and service and training and service will actually have a larger likelihood of being supported by large grants. So my suggestion is demonstrate, use information that provides data, provide examples, and the value is not only educational, but also financial and quote unquote PR, because it allows you, it allows you to say, we have a clinic that serves students in an effective way. You can say that, of course, without even flinch, but you have to have data to really support that. If somebody asks me, is the hair clinic effective? I can give you a 30-minute rundown that will actually have you walking out thinking, oh my God, these guys are pretty darn effective. And I'm going to give you a little tip. So the hair clinic is serviced only by students in training. Every other clinic, for example, the big clinics and universities are clinics managed by certified licensed professionals, and they have some students in training, and they call themselves training clinic sometimes. Well, what do you know? We are a true training clinic. And so when you look at the outcome average, the overall score of all those clinics, and then you compare that one to ours, we are right there with them.
Well, Carlos, before we wrap up our conversation today, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners? Anything from your very successful career and experience that our listeners could really take away and learn from?
From my point of view, the more opportunities we have to review the work we do, the higher the likelihood of success, improvement of techniques, advance of the profession, publication of outcomes. So we can even show what works and for how long. To give you a different example, I manage a biofeedback, neurofeedback clinic at a counseling center in Texas. And the question was, okay, is biofeedback of any help? We did a study comparing 1,000 students using only biofeedback and neurofeedback versus 1,000 students that were similar in terms of race, ethnicity, the level of course credits and GPA, etc. And the ones who did the neurofeedback, biofeedback, graduated in larger numbers. So retention was accomplished and graduation, but also with half a GPA point higher than the matching sample. So now you understand that you have a good system in hand that is providing a good service for the students, and you can showcase that. But here's the thing. We went back and analyzed the sample of clients, meaning those who participated, and guess what? The ones who participated up to 3 sessions gained nothing. The ones who participated from 11 to 25 sessions, which was a small number, but still a number, did not make any further improvement. So that shows you the parameters necessary to get the better profit and outcome from this type of intervention. So it gives you a chance to decide when to stop and save a lot of resources. So yes, the use of this type of system, making the analogy work on our perspective, using the recordings to analyze what works for how long, etc., it gives you not only a chance to improve the quality of service, but also to save resources, find places that need more improvements, and continue doing whatever works well.
I have one last question before we finally wrap. I just wanted to note, I was looking into your biography a little bit, and the quote, a motto you have cited is, "You must lift as you climb." And I feel like it's a very positive note to end on. Would you explain to us what that means to you and how that is represented in the field of counseling?
Actually, that motto, nobody knows from where it came from. But it was a motto that was heavily used at USF, the University of South Florida, by the Latine or Latinx community. And of course, I began to use it because this is what happens to me. Most of us work to achieve personal success.
That's true.
So what happens when you're gone?
What's your legacy?
So the idea of your success to be your success is a very, very pitiful idea. The idea is that as you progress, you need to help others to achieve similar progress. And you need to collaborate and work with quote unquote different groups, individual groups, and learning societies. And of course, even at a legislative, so you must lift as you climb, is you need to bring with you those who are coming after you. As my students, a lot of them are now faculty at different programs and all that. And with some of them, we still work together after I don't know how many years. Yeah. And I'm gonna give you a pretty sad picture. Remember that we have this wonderful captain who ended up landing his airplane in the Hudson River?
Sully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There is a picture of that airplane floating on the river with all the passengers standing on the wing. And that's exactly my position. I carry a lot of people on my wing. Why? I think that they are capable, outstanding, able to contribute and construct and build. Why trying to keep your stuff for yourself? So that's the reason why I teach, research, and publish. So I can help others to progress also.
That's very meaningful.
Well, Carlos, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I think our listeners just got a ton of expertise that they can take away and really improve their own counseling programs. If our listeners wanted to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Oh, the easiest way, and by today's standard, easy. My name, Carlos Zalaquett, followed by 8279 at gmail.com.
Well, thanks so much for your time today. Again, it's been very meaningful. We appreciate it, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and I really, really love what you do. Thank you for all your contributions. I know that business proposition are business proposition, but at the same time, you have a business that actually create many, many opportunities to accomplish several of the goals that I just discussed with you guys. So for that, again, and if you are on the north, stay warm.
On Record is a podcast presented by Intelligent Video Solutions, hosted by Mike Anzalone and Carmen Hawk, and produced by Kyle Shellstead. Find us online at ipivs.com/onrecord and on social media at Intelligent Video Solutions.